We'll talk some hoops here in the middle of all the football stuff. Your boy went to the Celtics-Lakers last night and did a nice little drive up, did a little afternoon, couple errands in LA. Don't do it very often. So it's just all over the place. Pico, San Vicente, Robertson, shout out to Denver. So yeah, there was a lot of big LA day for this guy. Doesn't happen very often. So going into that game, like if you've been watching these two teams, and I'll start kind of on the Boston side and finish with the Lakers side, because the Lakers were terrific last night. They just smoked them like from kind of the jump. First quarter, they were up like 10 points, and that was kind of the game. So there wasn't really this momentum thing you're so used to seeing in NBA games. You're like, all right, well, that team's down like 18. They'll get back into this thing. And it just never happened, which might be the most alarming thing beyond just the score. And thinking the Celtics, after, even though they had the overtime game the night before against the Clippers, there were people that weren't playing, and you figure, okay, they're going to be really up for this one. And this might be the kind of win if Boston gets in LA. And like, it's just an awesome crowd in there. There's also a ton of Celtics fans inside of crypto, but the Lakers fans are awesome. And so there's a feeling, I've been in enough buildings where you can tell the difference and be like, all right, this is going to be interesting here, because Boston's been struggling based on their standards. So if we look at Boston's season right now, and I don't really have a massive answer for you on what's going on. I have a couple theories that I'll share with you. I also, if you've been listening to me long enough, there's not going to ever be like a single game. Rarely is there a single game that happens where I'm like, okay, this game means all of these things, and now this is how I think the rest of the season is going to play out. But I think there's a lot of positives in here for the Lakers. Anyway, Boston starts 19-4 on the season. They're now 31-14, so they've been a 12-10 basketball team. If we look at their season numbers, they're the number 3 offense in the NBA still. They're the number 5 defense. Those things are really good. The last 15, at one point it was, I think, an 8-7 record in there. Now it's 9-6. The offense during that time is 5th. The defense is 4th. The net rating is 3rd behind only OKC and Denver. Denver, by the way, 12-3 in their last 15, which is they're tied with Cleveland and Oklahoma City. You've heard about them at 12-3 also. Denver's just on a really nice push here, and it's crazy. They have their guys, and they're healthy, and Jamal Murray's not playing terribly, and that's a pretty good basketball team, even if we still don't like the depth. And like anybody, I could still go through a list of like 5 or 6 things that I'm worried about with them. But Denver is starting to make that push, because we had talked about the West depth so much before the season started. And as it started playing out, it's like, well, it's not really the depth. It's the unknown after Oklahoma City. I mean, Dallas is going to be really good when everybody's healthy. They're a mess right now physically, and they're still competing in some of these games. Minnesota, on the other hand, it's probably the team I'm the most worried about, because they've been way healthier than almost all these other teams, and yet it doesn't look very good. So I'll probably do another Minnesota deep dive. I have stuff that I've written down, but it's not going to fit here. Anyway, so back to Boston. So what's going on? If you're top 5 in offense and defense, and the net rating is 3rd, like what's happening? Well, some of the clutch offensive stuff I even complained about it last year, and they won an NBA title. So it didn't end up being some fatal flaw for them. But they're 13th in shooting over that stretch. There's another thing here. If you look at that stretch, they're 29th in pace. That makes them the 2nd slowest team as far as, the rate that they're playing at. Which is ahead of only Orlando. You want a little magic minute? Orlando is now last in offense in their last 15 games through a 4-11 stretch. Yes, they're just getting Paolo back. They are missing other people. Franz is coming back. But that offensive number for Orlando in the last 15 is 100.8 points per possession. To put that in perspective, that's 2.5 points worse than Brooklyn. So Orlando's offense is the worst. And they're 2.5 points worse per 100 than the Brooklyn Nets, who don't want to win and get rid of anybody that can help them win. So, or plan on it with the rest of them. And to also look at that number, like if you look at the overall, not last 15 games for the Magic, they're the 2nd worst offense in the NBA, ahead of only Washington, another team not trying to win a ton of games. But over the season, Orlando was like at 108 points per 100 possessions, which is 29th. They're like 8 points off of that, 7 or 8 points off of that over these last 15 games. It's been abysmal for them. All right, so what does this mean on the pace thing for Boston? Well, what were they last year? Well, they were 19th. So, okay, they're playing slower. Does that mean anything? Again, I'm going to throw a bunch of things and then hit it with some observations. but it wasn't like they were the 7 seconds or less Suns last year. What else? Well, they're 14th on the season now, 3-point shooting. Okay. Last year, where were they? Well, they were second behind OKC at 38.8%. OKC was 38.9%. So we're talking about the team is, right there being one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the entire league last year. If you look at the individual shooting, Tatum is down. Jaylen Brown is down. Porzingis in 20 games is the same. Derek White is down. Drew Holiday is way down for 3-point shooting. Horford significantly down. Sam Hauser's down a few spots. So you're talking about 6 regulars and Porzingis being the same that are collectively down, which is kind of weird that everybody would just be below what they were shooting before. Only Pritchard is up out of the guys that really play. But I think specific to last night and something that I've noticed is that what I do like about Boston is that, they're going to figure out the mismatch and they're going to put their finger on the hurt part and just keep attacking and offering up some pain. But they were so determined to get Porzingis going last night that I think it threw them off, where Porzingis on that deep catch where he ends up with a perimeter player on him, it's just so small. Like seeing it in person, you're just like, this dude is below his armpits and he's reaching up, and Porzingis kind of shows you the basketball to remind you how much taller he is than you, that he's going to get this shot off. But as everybody's waiting for Porzingis to finish the execution of what the plan was, nobody's doing anything. No one's doing anything. They're just kind of waiting to see if Porzingis is going to score. And Porzingis had a really nice first quarter. But whenever it becomes an offense that's so determined to be like, okay, here's the thing that we're identifying, and then we're going to do this. And now, because that's the plan, everybody else may just be kind of like waiting around to see if it works. I think all of that stuff becomes connected. And I'm not saying like this is their downfall because they worked the Porzingis mismatches early in the game, and this is what's been going on here for a month. But that I thought was very specific last night for that game, where you're like, I get what you're doing, and it may be working here, but it feels a lot like there's something identified. Boston goes to attack it, and because everybody knows that that's what the plan is, then nobody else is really doing anything. And they're too good. The spacing is too good. The shooters are too good. They're too good of a basketball team where this is just what they're going to be now. They're going to lose to somebody in the second round of the playoffs. Like, I'm not even close to that yet. So the shooting thing, I can't imagine is going to stay this bad. I don't know if the pace thing necessarily matters. I'm not against the idea of hunting mismatches, but can you hunt mismatches so much that you disrupt any kind of flow? Again, that's a working theory, and I'm sure somebody on the staff would tell me, actually, we meant to do this and all these different things, and here's what, whatever. I'm just a guy sitting there watching basketball. The third quarter, Boston came out with all sorts of energy. They got a great stop, throw it out of bounds the next play. And then they have a stretch where it looks like Tatum and Brown are going to get more aggressive, start attacking. You could see their aggression and their intensity pick up. Then they miss 4 straight free throws. There's a play in the third quarter where Tatum is like ISO'd with Anthony Davis, which I think happened way too much. And he had to hit a step back 3 on Davis as the shot clock was going down. He made it. And my thought beyond like, what an incredible shot, it was a constant theme of last night of, that's so hard. Like, that's so hard if that's what you have to go to. And even though it went in and Tatum is ridiculous, like that's what it was. And I think it's a massive credit to how prepared the Lakers were last night. They played their asses off. Whether they got into bad switches, somebody who was physically at a disadvantage, the way they fought to just keep their ground. The grappling, it was a really physical game too. Like whatever was happening, say off a miss, and that kind of like not fast break, but that transition push where you're trying to figure out a cross match that's off or somebody's getting ahead of somebody else. The Lakers notoriously, like over the years, just didn't get back on defense. So you'd think, okay, let's look for that if you're the Celtics. But whenever that was happening and somebody was hoping to get like a deep catch or deep position, whoever it was, good defender, bad defender for the Lakers, they fought like crazy to keep their position. And it was really physical. I thought the Lakers were incredibly prepped. And when they got into bad mismatches, guys fought. And sometimes it's that simple. And then you could talk about the Lakers offense because everybody seemed to be able to fill it up last night. I thought that was a really impressive Lakers game. And I think the Lakers are a weird team in the sense that, like, I'm guilty of it too. If they're not a title team, we're just like, they stink because the standard is so high, because it's the Lakers, it's the history, it's LeBron, right? It's all the things that were like, well, could they win a title? So when they can't, then I know I'm kind of like dismissive. Like, well, they're not OKC. They're not Denver. I don't think they're Minnesota when they're right. I don't think they're Dallas. I'm not even sure if they're Phoenix. And the Clippers keep winning more games than I think most of us ever expected. So what happens in the Lakers analysis is that we don't appreciate like the good things about them because we're just like convinced they can't win a title. So what's the point of talking about LeBron James and this team? And that's fine, because like for some teams, it's incredibly unfair and you'd rather have it be that fair because that is your standard and those are the expectations. None of us had those expectations for this team. I don't think they're winning a title with this group. I don't know what's going to happen at the trade deadline. I don't know if there's a piece there that fixes them and brings them to that next level. But I think for a night in watching this Lakers team, I was really, really impressed with this group. Offensively, they're 13th this year, 21st on defense, which is another thing to see them play defense and fight like that. In some of those mismatch. Look, there were just a lot of times where like, oh, this might not go good, and then all of a sudden you see somebody, the Lakers just fighting his ass off. Also, the Celtics missed a lot of layups, but they're not a defensive team. Last year they were 17th on defense, 15th on offense. So a lot of those numbers are the same. 24 and 18 now. They are the 5 seed this morning. They were 21 and 21 last year. I just like this team a little bit better. I love a lot of the stuff that they're doing when they are setting up their offense. Setting up their offenses is a lot to ask of Austin Reeves at this point. I still think some of the LeBron point guard stuff is probably the best that they look on offense, and not having D'Angelo Russell just muck up all of their stuff, him just being gone, even if Finney Smith is a diminished version of the best years of him in Dallas, I think that's just a win in general. And I know that Shams had the story yesterday that people around the league were saying that Anthony Davis, LeBron getting a little frustrated about wanting some help and wanting to have the Lakers front office go all in on this team, which, you know, again, makes sense when you look at their timeline with LeBron. And I think what happens is, like, if you hate LeBron, you're like, here we go again. If you don't like Anthony Davis, you'd be like, well, I learned it by watching you, because AD learned from LeBron, like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to put pressure on ownership and the front office and all this stuff. But you just wonder the power of pressure as we get towards the deadline with LeBron, because if they don't do anything, we're going to get this cryptic stuff, which I think is just really unfortunate for a guy that's going to be going down as probably one of the 2 best players to ever play this game. But whatever, it's the way he operates, done his entire career. It's not the whole picture, but it's just a small little slice of the whole thing. Blame pie here. But when you think about the way LeBron and the relationship is talked about with the Lakers, you know, you could say, well, they brought JJ in. They drafted his son. You know, they kind of do whatever he wants. They did the Westbrook trade when it looked like they had the other trade with Buddy Hield that probably made more basketball sense than the Westbrook deal. And then they get Westbrook out of there. But I'd say after Westbrook, I think there's an argument to be made that the Lakers have actually been really patient, and patient in a way that makes more sense, because once they had more control of their own draft picks going back to last year's draft, you're like, oh, they'll probably do something. And then they didn't do anything. And if you look at the trade marketplace right now, there's a lot of names of guys that I've never been able, well, not able to stand is harsh, but there's just a lot of guys that are not Russillo guys. How about that? Like, oh yeah, he's available? No way. And I don't even know financially how much the Lakers could put together that makes sense for them. And so you start talking about, like, would they actually move like a couple of their good players, you know, outside of LeBron and AD, to try to add that third piece. So financially, there's some restraints there, but it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out, because there's 2 dueling thoughts on what the Lakers will do with LeBron. Draft his kid, bring in JJ, gave him a $102 million contract for 2 years. That should show some kind of commitment to him. But it's been a little while now, and we'll see what happens that first week of February, but it's been a little while now where they haven't been as aggressive as he certainly wants them to be. And the idea that, like, hey, let's just make a trade to make him happy. You don't have to. You gave him the $102 million, and he's 40 years old. He's not 35. But I liked what I saw from the Lakers last night, even if I know that the end of the conversation is, well, how good do you think they are? And it's like, well, I don't think they're that good, but it was good for a night.